Thought, I'll maybe it would be beneficial for Marlon as well, uh, to learn a little bit about Jakarta. So what's the case of Jakarta? How has it been done? And how we have transitioned from a sort of a highway oriented or cars oriented development towards more people centric transit oriented policies, development strategies, and what has been done, what are the numbers are telling us, and how we can probably do better, keeping in mind that we do still have more transit friendly projects in the pipeline. So yes, we're going towards the right direction, I'd like to say. Of course, I'm biased. Uh, but yeah, and we're beginning to see the transformative results of these high quality public transport infrastructure. And keep in mind that motorization in Southeast Asian megacities, Jakarta um, is one, is dominated by two-wheelers motorization. So there might be a slight like a different behavior to driving compared to US counterparts. For example, low income Jakartans households might drive even longer, but on two wheels. They might not be able to afford four wheels cars, but yeah, those scooters are pretty darn cheap. So and with subsidized gasoline, there's really less incentive to take transit if you already own a motorcycles. Anyway, um, let me begin then with some performance indicators. I received this last night from the head of Jakarta Transport Agency. Um, I guess it's the good news is they are keeping track. So they, and as they should. And they've used also referred to the TomTom congestion level indices, and we benchmark. I mean, Jakarta is benchmarking itself to comparable cities. So I think that's a really a good message, right? If you want to be a global city, then you want to compare yourself, you want to benchmark yourself against your peers, and that's what the Jakarta government is doing. So anyway, on the top left panel, that's the modal share indices. The so in 2023, 18 almost 19% of Jakartans use public transport, has been steadily increasing since the bottom low pandemic levels at 8.2, but it's still below the pre-pandemic level of 21.7%. Now there's a number of plausible explanation to this. First, pre-pandemic, those who have been using transit and then they started driving and they kept driving. so so once you have a taste of driving, probably there's probably less incentive for you to return to become transit users. Or I don't know, maybe there's a totally different working arrangements is possible today. um uh, this might seem like a distant past, but in 2019, these webinars don't exist. To be honest, I mean, it might be fascinating for us to recall. I mean, to remember what how we used internet, before the pandemic. But at any rate, nowadays, um, their working arrangements, remote working arrangements are no longer hypothetical. It's being put in use, and it's been in some workplaces has been institutionalized as legitimate work hours. Yeah, working from home, and so that probably means less work trips. In total, as a share of total trips. And now with more social trips, most I guess more people tend to use public transport primarily for commute. So this is kind of like where when the trip purposes, the work trip purposes has declined, as a percentage compared to pre-pandemic levels because of remote, working from home arrangements, or that means maybe public transport use as a percentage also might not return to the pre-pandemic level. Again, the jury is still out there. These are hypotheses to be tested. Speaking in the presence of future researchers. So I'd like to encourage you, if you're looking for research ideas, I'm gonna throw you some. On the top right panel, that's the so-called TomTom index of congestion levels. These are 52% here in 2023 refers to the additional time spent due to traffic delays. So this is how TomTom measures the severity of congestion in megacities. And yes, there's been Jakarta has been in the charts quite considerably, but so the higher number is better, right? That means that you're less congested. In 2022 to 2023, we were number 29, 30. 2021, this is during the pandemic levels, pandemic days, we were 46. So yeah, hopefully we don't return to we won't return to pre-pandemic levels, rank 7 and 10. Yeah, but that could also mean other cities are getting worse. So yeah, so the this is something that I would encourage researchers in training to take a closer look at. But at any rate, just just give you some idea about what this congestion is costing our economy. It's costing us 100 trillion rupiah a year. So that is more that is larger than of course in different metrics here, but um, for illustration, the total budget annual span of Jakarta city government is roughly 80 trillion rupiah. Yeah, so this is a number that we should keep in mind. This is probably the severity of the problem. So if we can, and 16 trillion rupiah is what we spend on the MRT line. What we spend on the MRT line. Here. How do I resume? Okay, yeah. On the MRT line, and given how transformative it is, and I think we really need to expand the network. On the bottom left panel, trips per day. Here, Object Online is that's the two-wheeler taxi. Marlon, for your reference, that's all the hype. That's all the buzz in Southeast Asia, right? The Ubers, but on two-wheelers, and we have our own local brands and local apps. And developing Asian cities are really the market for this. And it's not necessarily a good thing for transportation speaking, for transportation wise. Transjakarta, the bus system, um, with up to 1 million passengers per day. So that is indeed a good number. Now it has surpassed 1 million. The record was 1.3 million on a work day. And these are the numbers that that we should be keeping track of. Yeah. Any improvement in the system, any maybe disruption in the system will be reflected by the daily passenger count. Yeah, and I have some more numbers on Transjakarta on that one. And lastly, the bottom right panel. This is a survey interview survey of commuters done by the National Statistical Agency that found that 72% of commuters, so this is in Jakarta greater area, yeah. 72% of commuters uses their personal vehicles, two-wheelers and four-wheelers. In more than 90% say, of those, they say they wouldn't shift, they will never take public transport. Now, note that this is in 2019, so the pandemic has nothing to do with this opinion. But then again, 2019, the MRT has yet to operate. So maybe it's it's time to do another survey to update the survey, update these findings. And this is, I think, students like you are best equipped to do. About 37% of the respondents they say that they won't take public transport because it's just it just takes too long. It's not practical, and it's impractical. 35%, and this really speaks to what Marlon just said earlier about the travel time increase of using public transport, and just how inconvenient the I guess the pedestrian or access from and to stations. And this is something that I think should be a concern for transport planners and urban planners alike. And especially true, yeah, when these public transport, they're not competing with necessarily four-wheelers, but with two-wheelers, just more flexibility, more agile. It can traverse this the narrow alleyways and so on and so forth. So that is really what's unique, yeah, from a West perspective, I guess. And this is really understudied from a global literature perspective and how the two-wheeler behavior. Anyway, moving on, and this is um, from Transjakarta. Yeah, on the left panel is the service coverage. So in 2023, Transjakarta, the bus service, and essentially, the largest network in Jakarta, covers about 8.7% of Jakarta population. Now, this is a combination of the trunk lines, the off-corridor buses, like so the high frequency trunk lines, lower frequency feeder buses, and then there are smaller micro transit buses that as 8 to 10 passengers minivans is included in this map. Now, on the top right panel, that's the total ticket sales of Transjakarta per month, 2023 and 2022. As you can see here, February is always a dip, yeah, because of the holidays as well, January as well. In 2022, and just like as in 2023, the Ramadan month also has an effect on ridership. So the festivals have an effect of the ridership. But all in all, at up to December 2023, yes, indeed, it's right about it has passed consistently past the 1 million passengers per day mark, and so that's quite an achievement. Yeah, in terms of vehicle production, vehicle kilometers produced. Yeah, so this is the an a metrics of supply side metrics. Yep, it's also been increasing, but so that means Transjakarta is introducing not only more vehicles but more service routes and extended service hours. So all in all, compared to 2022, there's a increase of sort of like semi load factor here, passenger per kilometer, or number of ticket sales, passenger per vehicle kilometer is about 1.1. Yeah, customer or riders per vehicle kilometer, and that's up 28% from the year prior to 2022. Now, so um, so that aside, it's time to talk about urban design, placemaking. Because I'm sure there's urban planning students in the audience as well. Now, as Marlon just indicated, research suggests that you're actually can achieve more. You can do more good, not by increasing the frequency of your system, which is costly, but actually making it easier for um, uh, workers or commuters to access their workplace from station. So, and this is exactly what Jakarta has done and will hopefully continue to do in the coming years. So on the top left panel here, this is a really busy hub, Duku Atas. This is intersection or hub of where the commuter line from Bogor, MRT, and also Transjakarta intersects. And now it's we even reclaim the um, the carriageway, yeah, the motorway here. So we have reclaimed road space, vehicle space for pedestrian use, and as you can see, it's really working well. Indeed, walking to and from stations in Jakarta has significantly improved. Now, also in high job density area in the Sudirman Tamrin corridor, yeah, now with wider pedestrian and more convenient bus stops, safer as well. And there's a considerable improvement in the MRT and busway corridor. The last thing, that bottom right panel, there used to be believe it or not, a parking lot in downtown. So that's not the best use of space, and this in Tamrin 10, yeah, as a vacant lot that was used for parking, but this is really in downtown parking, um, so that sort of, you know, this does not incentivize people, to take transit otherwise, and with parking fees are capped, yeah, in for whatever reason, the statute there's a statutory cap for parking fees in per hour, or parking rates, I should say, in Jakarta. That doesn't really incentivize people to park, outside the core, and ride to downtown. Now, especially when there's a physical supply, in downtown. So that has changed. That has changed. Um, it's not only so they scrap parking and they introduce, a more vibrant urban space instead in Tamrin 10. So again, a lot has been happening both on the transit supply side. Um, Not only, so there's systems in the pipeline, like projects in the pipeline. We're expecting another 10 kilometers of high capacity, MRT system, so heavy rail in Jakarta. Um, um, and yes, with that, more of these needs to happen, more of this transit-oriented development, which is what I like to say here is exactly what a pedestrian-oriented design should be. Yeah, so again, maybe I'll close with that. So just keep in mind, if you really want a transit-oriented development, then your design should be pedestrian-oriented. And with that, thank you, Farah, for the opportunity. I'll yield it back to you.
you.